In this video, we are going to learn about elements of design. So, whenever we come across certain art or design or any other composition even, we tend to like it or not like it. But if we are questioned why, most of the times we will not be able to answer a definite answer. But if we consider, it is only because of the composition the art or the design has in it. For an art or design to be of good composition, it has to have the basic elements of design in them, which are arranged or combined by with certain guidelines. So, what are elements of design? They are actually the components of any composition which can be visually identified and can be isolated too. There are different types of elements of design. Let's see one by one. So the first element of design that we are going to learn is line. Line is considered to be a continuous mark or a moving dot. It has only one dimension, which is the length, but it has both position and direction. So they are majorly used to suggest the movement or to create perspective. There are basically different kinds of lines. The first kind is straight lines. The second would be dotted or dashed lines, and the third would be the curved lines. Apart from these, lines are basically used to either highlight or to outline an object. Secondly, they are used to capture the gesture or the posture. Thirdly, they are used to create values with hatching technique. Apart from these, lines are also used to imply the edge of an object, which is not directly represented there. Those kind of lines are called as the implied lines. The next element is shape. Unlike line, shape has two dimensions, which are width and the length. So shape is actually an area which is enclosed by lines to create boundaries. Shapes can be again classified into different types, which are geometric shapes, organic shapes, and finally abstract shapes. So what is geometric shape? Geometric shape means if the shape has a defined edge or boundary, they are called as the geometric shape. For example, circle, rectangle, square, etc. Secondly, we have organic shapes. Organic shapes means the opposite of what geometric shape is. It does not have the defined boundaries or edge. For example, if you are trying to represent a leaf or an algae structure in 2D form, the shape that we get would be an organic shape. Thirdly, we have abstract shapes. So abstract shapes are nothing but when we try to reduce an elaborate structure into a simplified shape, they are called as abstract shape. For example, we have heart shape, but the real heart is of bit elaborately structured, but we have simplified it to a level that we can easily draw it. So such kind of shapes are called as abstract shapes. The next element that we are going to learn is form. Form and shape are bit closely related, but the main difference between them is the dimension. Shape has only two dimensions as we already seen, which are the width and the length, whereas the form has three dimensions, which means it has width, length, and also the depth. So they are three-dimensional, and hence they have volume and mass. And this particular characteristics of them will let us to see the forms from different angles. Just like shapes, forms can also be divided into three classifications. First is geometric form, which again is like with defined boundary. Example, ball, cylinder, cube, any other such objects. Secondly, we have organic forms which do not have the definite shape or boundaries. For example, leaves, trees, animals, birds, etc. Thirdly, we have abstract forms. Abstract forms are just like abstract shapes where we are reducing an elaborate structure into a simplified form. For example, we have lots of abstract sculptures. Then the one thing is that in real landscape, we will be able to see lots of geometric shapes and the organic shapes existing together. For example, let's take a flower pot. So here the pot has a defined edges. defined boundaries. So hence it is an geometric shape, whereas the flower, the leaves or the stems in it do not have such definite shape. Hence they are the organic shapes. Like this, we have lots and lots of geometric shapes and organic shapes existing in real landscape. The next element is space. This particular element can be referred as the area between or within or around the object. Space has also three dimensions, which are again width, height and the depth. This particular element is basically used to create actual depth in any composition. Apart from this, they also help us to sense and visualize the gap between or above or below or around the objects. Sometimes they are also used to create perspective. The next element is texture. Texture means surface quality. Many times we will be saying the texture is smooth or soft or hard or rough. Those qualities are actually called as textures. And under textures we have two categories. One is actual or real textures. The second one is implied or simulated textures. So what is actual or real texture? If we are able to feel the texture the same way we see, then it is called as actual or real texture. For example, let's take jackfruit. When we see the jackfruit, we feel the surface is hard. When we touch it also, we'll feel the same. So those kind of textures are called as real or actual textures. Whereas in simulated or implied textures, the textures that we feel will be different from the texture that we have seen already. So for example, wallpaper. Wallpaper has different textures visually, but when we touch it, the textures will not be same as we see. So those kind of textures are called as implied or simulated textures. The final element that we are going to learn is color. Color is basically a product of light. It is just the reaction of our eyes to certain wavelengths of the radiation that are present in the color spectrum. Colors can be viewed in various forms. The first is hue. Hue means color at its original intensity, which means the color is not influenced with darkness or lightness. So they are called as hue. The second is shade. Shade means when you add darkness to a hue, the resultant color that we get will be the shade of that particular hue. Same way, when we add white to the hue, the resultant color that we get is called as the tint of that particular hue. And finally, tone. To get tone, we have to add gray to a hue. So the resultant color that we get will be tone. Apart from this, we have other characteristics of color too, which are value, saturation and temperature, simply called as VST. Value means the darkness or the lightness of color. Saturation means the intensity of the color, whereas the temperature means the quality of the color. For example, is it warm or cool? Anyway, we'll be learning more about color in a separate video. So we have come to the end of this video. We have learned what are elements of design.